Nevertheless, the government does still have does still avail of the services of non-governmental organizations, and therefore these policy considerations are equally important. Today, we have our distinguished resource persons who are here. Of course, our chairperson of the Commission on Audit, Attorney Maria Grace Pulido Tan. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Chairperson Teresita Herbosa of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Good morning, ma'am. Chairman of the Good Governance Commission for GOCCs, or the GCG, Attorney Cesar Villanueva. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Good morning. Chairman of the Philippine Council for NGO Certification, Mr. Augusto P.I. Carpio. Good morning. Yes. Please press the mic if you want to press the button so that you could be heard. Attorney Denny Santiago, Executive Director of the GPPB, the Government Procurement Policy Board.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
You're the Executive Director. Good morning. Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you. And Giovanni Platero, Deputy Executive Director of the Cooperative Development Authority.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning. Good morning. Yes. Okay. COMSEC, since this is a hearing, a formal hearing, COMSEC, please administer the oath to those who have not yet taken their oaths. Those who have not yet taken their oath, please stand. COMSEC, please take oath.
Kindly raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this proceeding? Thank you. You may take yours.
And we also have Mr. Jet Pakapak. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
And you are the Advocacy Program Officer of
Code NGO.
Code NGO.
Temporarily representing our chair. She's flying in from Davao this morning.
Okay. Welcome. Have you taken your oath? Okay. Welcome, welcome. And thank you for submitting a position paper on the matter. Okay. Let's start with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Where a lot of NGOs register. You did submit a position paper, and apparently from your position paper, the NGOs are also have also caused some good and some bad in the United States, and therefore they call it the NSPOs in the United States. Am I correct, Madam Chair?
If you want, please. The corporations are divided mainly into two big classifications: the stock and non-stock, non-profit corporations.
Yeah, dun sa atin, will fall under non-stock.
Yes, NGOs, foundations fall under the non-stock, non-profit corporations. And presently, about all applications are 30% non-stock, non-profit, 70% stock corporation.
30% ang non-stock.
Total applications for incorporation received by SEC.
And you said there are, as of 2014 August, there are 21,000 NGOs.
Your Honor, I think there's a typographical error. I think it's of August 2013. Yes.
2013 ito. Okay. 21,000
21,000 foundations, but I would say that only about 10,000, more or less, would be active foundations, meaning they bother to file the requirements such as audited financial statements, schedules, the sworn statements of amounts and applications of funds, and the certificate of existence of plans, programs, and activities.
Sige, Ma'am Chairperson, could you tell us, tell everybody for the record, what are the challenges of the SEC and how the SEC plans to, the proposals of SEC as to how we can tighten the accreditation of the NGOs in this country?
Thank you, Your Honor. When registering corporations, whether stock or non-stock non-profit corporations, the SEC merely relies on the documents submitted in support of the application. So where on the face of the articles of incorporation, everything's in order, it's in accordance with the prescribed form and substance of the corporation code, because that's specifically set forth there, then the application will be approved. In some cases, we do require endorsements. Like in the case of foundations, if they fall under the criteria of the DSWT, we would require that they present to us, prior to registration, an endorsement from the DSWT. For non-stock non-profit organizations, we also require endorsements from the DOH in case it would involve some health services. We also require from the TESDA or the DepEd if the purpose of the non-stock non-profit would be in those fields. Actually, recently we've written also the Department of Agrarian Reform as well as the Department of Agriculture, inquiring whether at this time they would want to also give us endorsements before we register. And
But
according to those two departments, they're going to study the matter and tell us.
Yes, ma'am, but do you take those endorsements as a seal of good housekeeping?
No, definitely not,
So
Your Honor. But
what are the value? What value would the endorsement be?
okay, the endorsement would probably avoid duplication of monitoring after registration, because if the SWD, for example, would accredit these corporations and under our MOA with them, we inform them if they finally registered with us, then they would also require some submissions in order to see that they're operating properly. Right now, we also require, of course, the submission of financial statements, submissions of all those other schedules and statements, but we do not have the resources to be able to monitor and check those submissions for each and every NSPOs. We can only do random examination, meaning we take a certain number of foundations in a year, about maybe only 6 to 10% of the total number, and that's what we examine. Of course, we examine if there's a complaint or a referral or a tip that something's amiss with this particular foundation, we'll readily examine that. But we cannot examine each and every of those 10,000 active foundations on a yearly basis.
20,000?
We can only do it randomly, yes.
20,000?
We only have 20,000, including those are not filing, because then we will have to revoke their incorporation if they persist in not filing any of the required submissions. And we only have 8 processors in our corporate governance and finance department who go over all those, who could go over all those 10,000 active foundations,
20,000
all in all.
So you have 8 over 20,000. That's really a challenge. In fact, the phrase you use here, and I'll quote, the monitoring process consists mainly of table monitoring. And
Yes,
right,
Your Honor.
and right. I mean, I would understand that since 8 processors or evaluators, whatever you call them, are in charge of 20,000 NGOs and growing as the years go by. No, I think that's the meat of the problem. So there is no submissions are submissions, but as we have seen in the past hearings, anybody can submit pieces of paper. And of course, they'll be duly received. No? And in your paper, you said that obviously you would like additional budget support to beef up your personnel. But
Per our computation, if it's going to be 200 foundations in a year to be processed by one examiner, we would need at least 54 processors instead of 8.
if the number is
200 foundations in a year by one processor, then we would need 54.
pero ano yun so anong ratio ang sinasabi niyo po? Recommended ratio 1:2.
If it's 200 times 54, that would amount to about 10,000.
Pero alam niyo po, base doon sa nakita natin sa mga NGOs na this past few hearings, hindi lang yung meticulously going over the papers, no, and finding out inconsistencies. What's important also is visiting the offices, umaharap ka sa mga tao mismo, the officers, talking to them, finding out whether they're just dummies. Because if you talk to them, then you ask probing questions. After a while, you get to know really whether they're legit or they're just there because their names were just put there. And
In fact, Your Honor,
go ahead.
we've already started since early last year when this matter was first talked about in the media. We've already conducted an investigation on all the foundations named in those reports. And we did already send people to go to the addresses of the so-called incorporators of those foundations to check whether they are really legitimate persons or their addresses are what
Yes.
indicated. We will admit that had we had sufficient resources, including computer-assisted review, we would have probably been able to detect fraud in procuring registration at the very first instance when they supplied those or filed the applications with us. But as I said, because we're based on a disclosure system, we'll only rely on the documents submitted. However, there are certain badges of fraud that we can detect just based on the applications. For example, we've noticed, or even in stock corporations, there could be instances where the tin is fake, or a person would have presented to us several tins, but depending on what application they're filing. And sometimes they do not indicate the specific addresses or things like that, which we can see even pre-registration. That's why we need a computer program that would help us detect those things. Because if you'll go only through a cursory review, then probably will be miss or overlook those signs of fraud.
By saying that you need a computer program, so therefore you don't have one right now.
Right now, Your Honor, we're actually having the bidding for the computer registration system. That would include having a database of all informations, TIN numbers, and the bids, I think, will be open next week.
Then
And
you should be
with
linked
that,
up
we'll have
also, logically, then you should be linked up also with the Bureau of Internal Revenue, since TIN is, as you said, a vital piece of information that will indicate a batch of fraud.
Yes, Your Honor, exactly. Because about in 2009, there were actually 3 personnel from BIR who were assigned to the SEC so that they could see whether there's something irregular in those things that are being presented to us. And it worked for a while, but I think BIR also had the need for those personnel. And since we don't have a linkage online or electronically, so we now have to rely just on whether the numbers do look like a tin, and maybe just rely on some complaints later that this person presented a wrong tin.
Yes. But even then, given the manpower, the increase in manpower that you just said, would that manpower be enough to physically inspect premises, interview officers, or would that require more people, more resources?
If you're on, please, we would not expect or even propose at this point that we will be examining each and every foundation, each and every application. Actually, Your Honor, what we would probably do is to come up with a risk-based system of monitoring compliance, as well as going over the applications filed with us. So if you are able to prioritize and if you're able to also work with other agencies such that there will be a clear division of how we monitor these foundations, then that would be even better for all.
Yes, yes. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge the arrival of the young and energetic Senator Bam Aquino. Yes, ma'am. That's important that there should be cross-referencing with other government agencies. Then that way, even without stepping out of the office, as long as you have the computers that link, then you can match info and find out who are those. Then the badges of fraud will come out already. And siguro, pag lumabas yung badges of fraud, yun na muna i-prioritize nyo sa physical inspection as a second tier of inspection. In fact, some legislators are mulling over a concept of a super agency just to take care of investigating all and monitoring, evaluating all these NGOs. But I do take note of the position paper of Code NGO where they said that it should not be put under one, it should be spread out. And I tend to agree because the sheer number would be overwhelming, no? For one agency. Even if you pour resources, in the proper resources, it will never be enough. And considering that we are an island nation, to centralize something would be very, very difficult and bureaucratic. I do sympathize with the plight of the SEC. I do know the number of personnel you are working with, not only for NGOs but for the other problems that you are facing right now. In fact, we are aware of so many of your investigations. You're not only investigating NGOs, you're investigating things like insider trading. And I know how difficult it is, given the resources that are available to you. We'd also like to acknowledge the arrival of Senator Sonny Angara. So, Chairperson Herbosa, is there anything else that you wish to... But by the way, yung sistema nyo ng endorsement, I don't think you should continue that because